Hello, magnificent human beings. My name is Landon Slaughter, and here we do yoga, we talk about life, and we focus on personal growth. You are in the right place, capable and strong. What are we doing today? Today we are going to look at the difference between crow pose and crane pose. Now, there are a lot of different things throughout the lineages that have gotten mixed up with this posture. So we're going to dive in and try to dissect some of this. Some of you are going to be very happy because I'm going to look at kind of the semantics things of how, it probably should be. And then others are going to be kind of upset because I'm going to tell you in the same breath that it doesn't really matter that much. And what I mean by that is that, you should have the knowledge, but sometimes you just don't need to take things so damn seriously. So please go ahead, roll out your mat, and I'm going to roll the intro screen. Thank all of you for being here. Let's take a look at crow/crane pose. First off, we need to talk briefly about the word. So crow and crane. Crow is Kakasana in Sanskrit, and crane is Bakasana. Now, these terms actually get intermixed a whole bunch. If you look, let's take Instagram, for example. You look on Instagram under Bakasana, and you see tons of people doing both crow and crane. If specifically you look at Kakasana, which technically is crow pose, you see way less. So I know Instagram is not, the god of Sanskrit and everything, but it's one of these things of we need to pay attention to kind of what the culture around us is saying. And in general, I think crow and crane really get kind of like mixed up. And technically, if you want to look at the Sanskrit translations, here is your answer. Crow pose is Kakasana, and crane pose is Bakasana. So that is how it is. Now, whether in your practice, if you choose to do one or another, then that's where things get tricky as well. Now let's look at the differences between each one of these postures. So this is your crane pose with straight arms and knees just in between your triceps and your armpits, just like this. And crow pose, there's generally two ways to do it. One is with bent arms, having your knees resting on your triceps like this. And the other way is with bent arms, having your knees hugging on the outside of your triceps. So those are the differences between crow and crane, and in crow, there's often two different ways we see people doing it. Now, let's work backwards and talk about how, crow pose is, and then get up into crane, because crane requires more strength and is a lot more difficult. So, hands on the mat. And I find it's often good to just hunker down here, chilling in kind of this ball pose, modified toe stand, whatever you like, because this gives you, the most kind of security here rather than coming from forward fold and hopping into it or something. So the easiest way to do crow is, I feel, having that kind of your knees hugging in at your triceps. And if you want to have the most stability you possibly can in this pose, there's kind of a unique thing that can happen in between your forearms and your shins here. So if you look at it, they kind of almost make an X. So if I'm here, then my knee is on the outside of my tricep, hugging in just gently, and then my elbow is on the outside. So, dissecting this even more. See how it kind of makes this X position? Now I'm exaggerating, right? But you kind of want a gentle crossing of, you know, where your arm is here on when your leg, where your shin bone is across your tricep. So that's where the X happens. And it's nice because as you lean forward, you can kind of have this push and pull that happens between your elbows coming out a little bit and then your knees hugging in. So we do want to try to keep those nice quote unquote chaturanga arms, but they don't have to be as much of a 90-degree angle, and that might be the goal one day. But again, this is a tough posture, and not all of us can just come right into chaturanga arms and, you know, throw our shins on top of our triceps. This takes lots of practice and lots of strength building. So shifting your weight forward, knees on the outside of those triceps, and just kind of playing with it, right? Because if your elbows start to slide up and like through, you're not going to want that. You want your elbows on the outside. But the trick is you don't want to bring your elbows out too far, right? You want to keep them nice and tucked in. So you need to kind of find this happy medium here. You can play with it by finding where that balance should be. And eventually, once you build up that strength, then flying in your crow. And I've heard lots of people put mattresses down, they put a bunch of pillows down, because if you practice this pose a lot, you might have gotten some rug burn marks on your face from you know, your mat and everything. So really, if you need the whole setup in front of you to kind of roll into and break past that fear, then do it. Just put a bunch of stuff down, and, you know, so that you can crash away without injuring yourself. Sometimes that's what it takes to break past that fear, is just, you know, knowing that you have that kind of safety net. Okay, so that is one way, having your knees on the outside, and the other way is having your knees resting in at your triceps. So this is kind of the in-between, almost, between crow and crane. You know, if you're really going for that crane pose with those straight arms, then you're going to want to start to practice this version of crow. Gently resting those knees on those triceps. So knees, actually bring them way up, you know, like into your armpits. And then as you shift forward, they kind of slide down anyways onto your triceps. Very good. And eventually your arms will be straight, coming into your crane pose. And it's hard. I can hold crane for maybe 2 seconds because there's really a lot of balancing and strength involved, because when your arms are that straight, you have to lean forward quite a bit. And then this also takes a lot of wrist strength and flexibility, forearm strength as well. There's a lot of things happening in your crane pose. So if you're not quite there, that's fine, but just really trying to focus on the balancing element, because that's what is quite difficult in your crane pose. It's hard, right? Wrists, ouch. So doing lots of those wrist loosening exercises we see a lot in yoga. You know, if you're in tabletop, flipping one wrist, flipping the other. So keeping nice healthy wrists if you want to elevate into your crane pose eventually. That is our class today. Last tip is if you want to do a crow pose and you're not quite there, then forearms on the mat, knees come up to those elbows, and then as you lift up, shift your weight forward, coming into baby crow. It's much better because you have a much less of a distance to fall, so that's another option for you as well. Thank you all so much for being here. And again, that's the differences, and really, please, it kind of doesn't matter, like I said at the beginning. If you are in the version where your knees are hugging in, you know, on the outside, don't let some teacher come by and say, oh no, rest your knees on your triceps, you're doing it wrong. I mean, this pose is so difficult that we need to allow ourselves a whole lot of latitude to be able to gain some confidence, gain some strength, and then eventually, you know, the goal is to raise up into that crane pose. But if you just keep those nice chaturanga arms, your bent arms in your crow, then that's cool too. So thank all of you so much for being here. Greatly appreciate it. Again, my name's Landon Slaughter, and if you have not subscribed, please do so. I will see you guys. Love you. Take care.